Pastoral Theology 1, Lecture 3, so-called qualifications for the ministry. We'll move a little faster now. I just like to talk this out because it's a hot topic, difficult. And online students, especially current pastors, this is my take on it. This is my conviction. And it may not be yours at all. And that's okay. In fact, most independent Baptists will not have the view I have. So that's my disclaimer. Be careful. It's like, some of these things you might see on TV. Don't try this at home. These are trained professionals doing this. Don't you try and jump off with a dirt bike. Well, my little statement is, I'm not that smart, and this is my thoughts on it. So like I said before, it is possible for a former drug-using, murder-committing pedophile to become a pastor. So make sure in case you didn't hear that at the end of the last clip. So, if God has called someone to something, then I believe that calling persists no matter what someone does. You can sure mess up your life, but God has called you to holiness. Always has, always will. And so that calling continues, doesn't it? Or if we're unholy, it stops. No, it still is there. If God has called a man to the pastorate, then he is indeed called. I believe no matter what circumstances he gets himself into. He has a spiritual gift for that, and those gifts are not removed from you upon your sinning. Now, obviously, if he's not in a repentant mode, he's not repentant of his sin, he's got a bad heart, just all those things, he's not ready yet for the pastorate, but I believe the calling is still there. God wants him to get his life straightened out, blameless, and go. If a God-called pastor has blame put upon him for something, like getting in a fist fight at a baseball game, let's say a pee-wee softball game, then that pastor isn't done with being a pastor for the rest of his life necessarily. It just means that he's got a horrible stain now that will hurt that good work that he's pursuing and needs to be immediately dealt with and resolved. So, the community finds out about that. Wow. Yeah. It's like that. We won't go into this much, but some city in Washington State, there was a pastor who I know, who committed child molestation, according to the court decision. And so he's in prison now. But let's say he gets out in 5 years, whatever. Can he pastor again? And most of you know what I'm talking about. You're in your mind going, no way. But such were some of you. We have some things we've done that are very bad. Anyways, that brings it down to our level. The qualifications issue. Well, here's where pastors almost unanimously state, is listed here, the qualifications for being a pastor. By qualifications, they mean a list of items that a potential pastor must have in order to be considered for the pastorate. And also, most of them will say they must keep them or they will no longer be qualified for the ministry. So they disqualified themselves. But in reality, the only qualification I ever hear talked about by these pastors, there's been many, and actually effectively employed, meaning they actually do that, follow through on it, is the issue of being the husband of one wife, not being divorced. All the other 20 that are listed in these two passages, I never hear talked about. Apt to teach. He was a brawler. His children were under subjection with all gravity. I don't hear that at all, ever.
Yeah, some churches will put that in their contract, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
And only that one.
Only that. Only.
And that's the other's like.
Yeah. So, but let's be fair. So let's just say it is true that being divorced disqualifies you. Let's just say that is. I don't believe it is, but let's say it is. Then, well, with that line of reasoning, then all these others should be the same way. Because it doesn't say only divorce is the one you've got to have. It says must be, and it gives a list here. What man of God is going to have all these in order and never have messed up on it in his life?
None. Zero.
Yeah. We have no pastors, ever. Looking at these qualifications or so-called requirements, I see that probably every godly pastor, so I would call him godly, that I know is significantly deficient in at least one of these areas. Like the soon angry part, or maybe he's not a lover of hospitality, or has a temper problem, or not, his children aren't in subjection with all gravity. All these, just look at them. With these stringent rules, no one would be qualified for the ministry, in my limited opinion. Furthermore, 1st and 2nd Timothy, if you go into those books, are full of charges to Timothy, the young pastor, involving what his character needs to be as a pastor. There's many more. Oh, these so-called qualifications are many and high, and who, pray tell, is qualified? So that helped me to think of it a little differently, a different context, instead of how I was taught by former pastors, that if you're divorced, you're disqualified. I was never divorced, but I had done some sins that, in my mind, I thought might be an issue. And when I was before the ordination council of other pastors from other churches, that became a big issue. It wasn't so good. I've been nervous before in my life, but not to the point of where I thought my life was going to end. Not end, but I wasn't going to live, but just what would be the purpose anymore of living. But it turned out okay. So I think that the biggest problem is the assumption that these are qualifications, prerequisites, requirements. I believe that they are, I call them standards. And even if they are qualifications in God's view, He's going to set the bar. For Christians, the bar is set. Sin not. Be perfect. Be up to the mark. All these things. Are we? No. Do we cease to become? Do we cease to be a Christian? Can we still serve the Lord, even though we're not at that level that He wants us to be? Yeah. But it's going to be an issue. It's going to hurt us. Hurt our effectiveness. The man needs to strive to meet these. If he's deficient in an area, he needs to correct it, or it's going to hurt his effectiveness as a pastor. And it surely has hurt mine, where I mess up, and there's at least maybe one here I mess up on, or 5 or 10. These issues listed here, I believe, fall under the heading of this blameless. They might have had problems with some or all of these earlier in life, but they've... Now this is interesting. Have they actually, though, made it right? You can say they don't do them anymore. Let's say you were a whoremonger. It's not on the list here, but most would say that would be an issue. You just went out and partied and slept around. How do you make that right? How do you make that right? Well, it might require you going and remember these people and trying to find them and call them and apologize to them. Take out your black book, whatever it is. And I believe, this is my belief, because I just know in my own life it's happening, because I'm not right at all wrongs. I have not done that. If I went back to a certain city back years ago, and I mean, it's been so long, but let's say as a 28-year-old, when I was partying crazy, and as a 22-year-old, so as a 28-year-old trying to plant a church in wherever, I won't tell you where, and these people know about me still, and that's going to be an issue. I'm going to have to right those wrongs and be blameless in that regard. I think it's no matter what, but definitely it's going to hurt your ability to pastor if you're in that town where the people know about this, because you were going to comment on having a good report of them which are without.
Yes, I wanted to know exactly what that meant.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll get there. I don't know if I can tell you that, but we'll talk about it. So we need to. So who hasn't had a problem with patience in their pastor, loving hospitality? Every pastor, would-be pastor, needs to do their level best to follow these guidelines, to be used of God. So it's a big issue. The standards for being a pastor. Let's look at these. I apologize for the length of this lecture, but this is one of those lectures, which is almost every one I do, but one of those that has got so many questions attached to it. The husband of one wife. So this is in short here in, I think, Pastoral Theology 3 in our master's program, which we're in now, the second year. We're going to have a whole lecture on the divorced pastor and deal with this. Yes, sir.
If we're talking about it, why doesn't it say divorce right there?
I know. Let's talk about that. So, exactly. It doesn't say divorce anywhere in there. It says the husband of one wife. This removes any woman from pursuing the pastorate, number one. If you take this exactly how it's saying it. Does every would-be pastor need to be married? If you're going to take this totally literally, I forget the term you would use, but technically, must be the husband of one wife. It doesn't say, if you're married, you need to be the husband of one wife. It says, must be, must be the, however the verse goes, must be the husband of one wife. So there's some guys that stand on that. And I can understand the logic. If you're not married, you're lacking some wisdom in a lot of things, not having a family. But Apostle Paul was married, but then became a widower. If taken as a blatant disqualifier, then no single man could be in the ministry. Paul wrote this to Timothy because at that time polygamy was a big problem in the society, the culture. Polygamy. A polygamous man was not to be qualified for the pastorate. Now, what would happen if he got rid of his extra wives and just had the one, or got rid of them all? Would he be okay then?
He divorced a whole bunch.
Yeah. Well, whatever. He just said they were like not real marriages.
Yeah.
Back of a cereal box marriage or Russian brides, whatever it
It
is.
says blameless.
Yeah. So could he be? I mean, these are questions we can ask. I think anyone can. It's a man that's actually called to be a pastor. I don't think you can be disqualified. The only disqualifier, I guess, is a temporary one until you get to where you're righted the wrongs. But if he divorced a second, okay, back it up here. But if he divorced a second and others, the wives, he would then potentially be the husband of one wife, not a polygamist. Again, Brother Eric, like you're right, you said, there's no word divorce in here.
But here, it's in the New Testament.
Yeah, but I mean,
I'm
it's
just saying,
qualifier.
why don't, if they're using it here, in the Gospels we're talking about marriage, and then here, why didn't the Lord just say divorce?
Right. Well, he didn't say divorce.
I know.
And if we're going to be technical about it, which we can be, divorce is not the issue. It's married to one woman. That is the issue. Let's go on. But we're not, I'll just say this, because some of you guys online are going, oh. If there is actually a man in our church who is planning to become a pastor who's been divorced. Many of you know who he is, but it's not like that's an ideal pick. I'm looking for divorced men here to train for the ministry. Divorced men are top of my list. No, that's a huge problem. Oftentimes you've got a character issue, a sin problem that helped bring about divorce. I'm not saying that man did, but I'm sure he did. I don't believe any divorce comes about just you're totally innocent on the issue, in my view. Look at this, put it right here. The Lord allowed the Jews to divorce their polygamy when they were in polygamy, or were they? They married heathen women, the pagan women in Nehemiah. That's interesting. But in the New Testament, Jesus, considering Jesus' encounter with the woman at the well, where he explained to her that she indeed had 5 husbands, past tense, and the one she was with now was not her husband. He could have said, "No, you've had one husband and 4 adulterous relationships. That's the one you're in now." He didn't say it that way. He said, "Yes, you had 5 husbands." Because some believe that once you have sexual relations with someone, or you get married, that marriage is binding for life. So if you're divorced, that marriage still continues on in God's eyes. I used to believe that, but that woman at the well story, true story, it blows that to pieces. If you are divorced and not remarried, you are still technically the husband of one wife, no matter how you define divorce. Or the husband of no wife. But if you're going to say it's binding for life, you're still the husband of one wife because you're not remarried. And I've asked a few pastors this when they get to that point. I go, what about if you're divorced but you don't remarry? And then I don't hear any response really. They say, well, divorce is disqualifying. And again, find it in the scriptures. You can interpret it that way in this passage, but it does not say divorce is disqualifying. It may very well be true that to say that one who legally divorces and then remarries is not married in God's eyes to the other woman anymore. So he's still the husband of one wife when he remarries. What happens when the wife has an affair? I mean, you're a good guy. You're called of God, you're pursuing the pastor, you're getting trained, and your wife just flips out, the devil gets a hold of her, whatever, and goes and has an affair, and divorces you, falls in love with this worthless being, and you didn't even know about it. And everyone would say you're a good guy. You're rendering due benevolence to her. You're doing all the things you're supposed to do as a husband. And she just whatever happens there. So what about that? It's not even his fault, we'll say. These are hard questions. I believe that a divorced man can become blameless in that area. So this is another issue. How do you become blameless? It's going to take quite a bit of effort, especially since most pastors and churches believe that a divorced man is permanently disqualified. You can get blameless on that. So that's something I'm going to talk to him about, actually. We're going to make sure that has happened. Let's move on, though. These will be easy. Vigilant. So if you look at the list of things, there's 20 total. I won't spend a lot of time here, but someone read what it says about vigilant.
Vigilant, sleeplessly alert, ever watchful. A bishop must watch over the flock for wolves. He must not punch in and punch out of the time clock for his duties. He must ever be aware and concerned for the sheep's well-being. This job is not for those who value their free time. A pastor is to be on duty 24/7.
So vigilant, because you got to be watching these sheep. You got to be praying for them, and it's not like you're around them all the time. But that's a big issue. Sober. Someone read that.
This word, sophron, speaks of self-control. It implies the ideas of thoughtful, sensible, sane. He is not always the clown. He is serious-minded. Can a pastor joke around some, be goofy at times, and use humor in his messages?
Never! Ever! Should they? They need to be removed from the pastorate immediately when that happens. Well, that's a question I ask myself. Because I definitely go, I think, across the line on this occasionally. Sober, serious. Then there's lightheartedness, and there's times for that. Oftentimes not behind the pulpit, but we go into homiletics where it's wise sometimes to refresh people's minds. Or they're starting to think that you hate them because you're talking about sin so much. You go into a little lighter-hearted thing. Well, yeah, but to be goofy, to be a clown, to be a jokester, I don't think that's wise at all. So I have to watch myself. With good behavior, this means orderly and well-arranged. His mind and inner man are in good order and are evident by his outward living and his demeanor. He's not one where bad behavior can be found in general. In general, you would call a good guy. That's a hard one. Good behavior. It covers so much. Given to hospitality, and also it says lovers of hospitality. It literally means, from this one source, lovers of strangers. It implies the ideas of course, hospitality, generosity to guests, and openness to all people, not just a select few only. His front door is always open. His welcome mat is always out, especially for the people under his care. He's not hesitant to have others view him in his home life. Come on in. Many pastors, though, seem to, hide from their parishioners as much as possible. They are quick to go to their office once the services are over. In the bigger churches, that's what happens. I've seen it. I've been there. There's one recently. I remember this. Though people came there to his door, but he wasn't out there with the crowd. He might have been there for a few minutes, shaking hands as he left. I'm not so sure how long he was there, but then he went to his office. I remember in the big church in Seattle, greater area, that was typical. And he would be dropped off from his house right when it was time to preach. He wasn't even there, at least when I was there, he wasn't even there until it was preaching time. His private driver.
Sounds like Hollywood to me.
Yeah. And so they don't want to, and I've heard this many times, well, I'll never live on the church's property. I'd say many say that. Why? Because to people will just come in and they'll have no privacy. They'll basically say they're going to bother you. But you can set up some general guidelines. From midnight to 6 a.m., please don't come by my house. Wow. Some will say, on Monday's my day off, so don't bother me on Mondays. I've kind of joked around that, but you can call me anytime. I won't answer it, though, but you can call me anytime. They won't usually see anyone without an appointment scheduled. You gotta have an appointment. Sorry, you can't see it. Rarely do they entertain church members at their house. There's some pastors who might be hospitable. So let's just say they're hospitable, but are they lovers of it? How many, including myself, how many do you know that are just love to entertain? Come on over to my house. I just love to have it. I just want to spend all the time in the world fellowshipping. Got nothing better to do with my time. Come on. I got lectures and lessons to put together. So I've got maybe half an hour today. That's a problem. Apt to teach, someone read.
Apt to teach. They will naturally have an aptitude to teach because of their spiritual gift. but it is key that they cultivate and use that gift. They need to be actively teaching. There are many pastors who only preach and leave the teaching to his associates. It doesn't say anywhere that they must be apt to preach.
Nowhere in Scripture. Apt to preach or anything like that. Apt to teach. So it's interesting. There must be an aptitude, an ability to teach. And so many pastors really refer to themselves as preachers. Or, that's our preacher. That's what he's known for, preaching. He's a good preacher. But is he a good pastor? And a pastor's going to spend a lot of time feeding the flock, not yelling at the flock. But we also often think of the pastor as the one who preaches. Yeah, but he doesn't even have to preach. But he has to teach. I think he needs to preach too, but some I don't think have an aptitude to teach. They can yell real good. Not given to wine. He's not one who parties. He's not talking about alcoholic wine here. I think he's talking about just unfermented grape juice. This is kind of the whole Jewish festive spirit around grape juice and all that it meant. As you have grape juice out, it's party time. Fermented or not. So the pastor can't be a partier, can't be known as the one that likes to just have a great old time. Can a pastor have an occasional small glass of alcoholic wine with his expensive steak dinner now and then?
Yes. Is that
Yes?
a question? No, he cannot.
I just wanted permission. What?
Are you asking us?
Yes.
No, he cannot. That's
Someone
a
else
steak
that
dinner.
is not a legalist.
No.
Okay. Others may, you may not.
Beer would be better anyway.
Yeah.
Where's Sister Gabriel?
Yeah. This thought, the flesh, I don't even want to say it, but there would be a certain scenario, just be nice. Cold. Not to get drunk, just a bubbly, cold with a lime and type of thing. Down by the beach, just relaxing, no one else around. But, oh, how much better it would be to have cold water. Amen. No chances of getting drunk and doing something foolish with cold, even soda pop.
Yeah.
Maybe Mountain Dew you might, but no striker. An elder must be in control, not be given the blows. Pugnacious, whatever that is. Not one who has a chip on his shoulder, is quick-tempered. Hey, what about the classic fist-pounding preacher? Whatever. Fist-pounding preacher.
Fish found it.
Yeah, it's like this guy found fish, I guess.
Well, there's some guys you see, maybe you hear about, or you just maybe seen a video clip of, that just look like, I wouldn't want to get in a fight with that guy. But patient. Oh yes, every pastor is very patient. That's what they're known for, right? Right? I can't wait all day.
Just answer me.
Yes. Yeah, I know.
Quickly.
What is that word? How many pastors? Oh, seem patient when going through a building program. Well, we haven't had one really here, but do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
They're patient folks, aren't they? I hear about these guys. They give testimonies and they talk about their impatience. Or how about when there's a decrease in numbers or a decrease in finances? Patient, yeah, that describes them. Not a brawler. Not a fighter, averse to fighting. Not physically or verbally abusive. Often these independent, fundamental, hellfire and brimstone pastors got some pretty tough words outside the pulpit. Mm-hmm. And maybe I have too. I don't want to, but I hear some of them, and if I didn't know they were a pastor, say I was just out in town and didn't know they were a pastor, I'd say that is a rude, mean-spirited bozo. Oh, he's a pastor of one of the largest independent Baptist churches in town. Oh, never mind, he's a nice guy. And some even get in fistfights. Only down south, though. Go out and back with the deacon board and have a fight. Now, someone read about greedy, filthy lucre. Because I can't read that one.
Not greedy of filthy lucre. This term signifies not a lover of money, not fond of money. Earthly treasure is not his goal, and he is not in the ministry for money.
Amen.
He doesn't require a certain salary, or any for that matter. This further implies then that he is generous, not overly possessive of his material blessings. The pastor should be the biggest percentage giver.
All right, honestly, I do not require a salary. I think if you did pay me a salary, I'd be entertaining other churches, though, but because I got to survive. But I would not require it. If I planted a church, I had no salary other than whatever I took back from the tithe I gave, which you can do, by the way. Beginning, we'll talk about how you do that legally and ethically. But yeah, but so many are like, so what? What's it? You got a 401k plan? Do I have a parsonage? Different things we're looking for. What?
Automobile.
Yeah, do I get a
new Cadillac?
Yeah, Cadillac. What do I get? And big giver. And maybe you have somebody gives you, but it shouldn't be the case typically. If analyzed, you're the biggest percentage giver, not because you have to be, because you're the leader in everything. You're the best in everything. Oh yeah, I'm not, but some things I try to be. One that ruleth well his own house, having his children in subjection with all gravity. We're like almost done, yeah. Having faithful children not accused of right or unruly. Yeah, that typifies every pastor's family I know of. Some of them, just to be honest with you, some, not all, some have kids that are a bunch of brats. And they're in the pastor, they've been in the pastor for a while. But I would term those kids are unruly. You just watch them in a restaurant. And we've had some missionary families come, and I'm just cracking my neck going, I'm going to be a good testimony here. And I have to go help their kids not tear up things in the restaurant. Well, I didn't say we stopped supporting them. I just said, wow, what's the problem there? Just a different viewpoint on things, maybe, what unruly is. Yeah, and culture, yeah, it has a lot to do with that. But unruly is unruly. They should be able to say, why not? And there's some, though, with especially a lot of kids in their family, line up, sit down, quiet. And generally they do, and you're like, wow, it's quiet. They obey. That's a rarity, though, I suppose. Accordingly, his children are obedient, submissive. They are grave, dignified, and courteous. So how many pastors are there who have a sassy, outspoken wife, or a rebellious 5 or a 10 or a 15-year-old? There are many. In fact, it's kind of interesting on the wife's side. Especially if the pastor is more of a mild-mannered person because of salt and pepper issues, positive negatives, the negatives attract. The wife oftentimes becomes the outspoken one. The leader, even though he's really the leader. And I can think of about 4 on the coast that are like that. And their wives, I can just picture wearing the pants. And sometimes I see them in pants. And they, very loud, exhorting men. What are you doing? Exhorting men. That is insane. Telling, taking on the role, trying to be the spokesperson for the pastor. Because he won't speak up, so I will. Classic example of this being a big problem is like the pastor who has a home life that's just chaotic, stressful, very negative. Maybe we know someone that's kind of like that now. And this shows when the family's and this is going to show when the family's at church and out in public. It's just going to be a bad testimony. It's going to be bad all around. In general, all his kids are brats. His wife, she's got an attitude. And should this pastor be allowed to be the rulers of the church family? No. I think you can fix it and be that. It's just like committing adultery, having a drug problem. This is a significant issue. But most just go, oh, well, kids will be kids, and no one's perfect. Not a novice. Look at Charles Spurgeon, though. So just because you got your BA degree in theology from wherever, and you're 22 now, 23, you don't go out and start a church, right? And you've never even worked at McDonald's before. Okay, Brother Dean, read 14, if you would. Oh, let me read the pink here. He should at least have served in a key leadership position for 4 years or more prior to ordination within his church. So, that's a general statement. It doesn't mean he has to be a pastor, but he's in leadership roles. Go ahead.
A good report of them who are without. He must have a good reputation with those outside the church. He must be one who has a good name in the community. He doesn't ever argue with the police.
Okay, go slow on these.
Okay.
Think about this now. Okay, just take breaks in between, because I want you to get this mental picture.
Okay. He doesn't get disgusted when there are long lines at the Walmart checkout area. He doesn't get sarcastically rude when McDonald's forgets yet again to hold the special sauce on its Big Mac. I'd get extra, not withhold.
Well, yeah, but whatever your issue
forget
is.
to add it, you know.
I've seen, not you guys ever get disgusted, but I've seen pastors get disgusted and do these things. I'm like, yeah, good report of them without. That would be a bad report. If you were to interview people that know this pastor in town, what would be the consensus? I mean, maybe out of 100, how many would say, and they'd have legitimate things, not just I don't like him because he comes to my door and tries to shove his religion down my throat. No, he's rude. He's been rude at Walmart. He was rude to me as a checkout cashier. He's rude at the bank. Rude here. Yeah.
How's he going to invite them to church?
Right.
I mean, it's not.
No. And as the pastor is looked at, so is the church typically.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say that shouldn't be the case. Well, it is, in general. That's how their view of the church is the pastor. So a good report of them who are without, I believe, being without the church membership, outside of them. And the report of him is a good guy.
He doesn't road rage.
Yeah, boy, I mess up there sometimes. I've done it a few times where a car's gone slow. I follow the speed limit, but I don't want you going five or more under. But going up that hill towards Walmart, or to where KFC is, and then I'm kind of tailgating them a bit closer than I probably should. I'm not right on their tail, but I'm just letting them know I wasn't too pleased. And we both pull in the Taco Bell. I'm like, yeah, go to a different restaurant. That didn't turn out so good. Not self-willed. He should be others-willed. It's not. He shouldn't have the my way or the highway mentality. That typifies most pastors. Hey, who's the pastor? Who's the pastor? All right, listen to me. This is what we're going to do. Self-willed. He doesn't have to be in every decision that's made. Hey, was a decision made without me involved with it? Okay. He is cautious to make sure that others' ideas have been considered well. And he will try to please others rather than himself. So that's dangerous, though. But that should be his heart, to want to have the flock happy. But of course, you want to do what's best for them, too. It's a hard balance. Tough medicine. Not soon angry. Someone read this, but go slow on the examples, because they're ones I'm thinking of here.
Not soon angry. He is not inclined to anger. He is not quick-tempered. How many preachers do you know who seem to get angry awfully easy? Many. Pastor, the piano player, is running late.
Wait, stop. You're pretend like you're the person saying this. I spelled it wrong.
I'm going to ask him.
Yeah, act. Say, Pastor, the piano.
Pastor, the piano player is running late. Pastor, we were short a lot in the missions account for this month.
You gotta be kidding me!
How would the typical pastor react to these?
Yeah, I don't know. I do try and control myself, but I know what's inside of me sometimes when I hear these things. One of the worst things to do is, right when we're getting ready to start the morning service at 11, to come up. I see someone coming up to the pulpit. I'm getting things arranged. It's like 1 or 2 minutes to go. I'm going, please don't have bad news. Don't say something negative. And oftentimes it is. It says, I remember, I forget who said this, but I think it was Pastor Priss. They came up to him just before he was going to preach and said, Pastor, the deacons, they're all mad, and, well, I'll tell you afterwards.
Oh, no.
Or his line was the whole sermon.
Yeah.
Oh, don't do that. Lover of good men. Hey, he loves to be around good men. Good, godly men. Men that believe like him. It's a joy to be with him. He doesn't have bad friends. Questionable friends. Just, okay, holy. You understand that. Temperate. It's more on a sober, clear-headed. I thought it was just a temper issue, but it's more temperate in all things. He's cautious, and alert, and circumspect. But there's a lot of hot-headed preachers out there, so we're going to put it under this one. So what happens to these that have a temper issue, get soon angry? Are they fit for the pastorate? In God's view, no. Are they disqualified? No. But what God is expecting, and you can say demands, in order to have the sheep taken care of well, is a man who doesn't do these things, or in the right aspect here. Holding fast the faithful word. This implies both a thorough knowledge of the Scriptures and a commitment to it. He's stable. He's got his convictions set solidly on these doctrinal issues, the big ones. Not waffling and wondering, well, maybe there's a universal church, but I'll go along with what you're saying. So there's many other guidelines and charges, requirements for the ministry. You can read on into Titus and Timothy. Don't fall into the misguided popular belief that all that's necessary to be qualified to ministry is to be saved, a man, been trained, and not been divorced. That's what I hear typically. If this is your belief paradigm, then you need to add all the other 20 or 21 qualifications mentioned here. It might do better to require salvation, sure. Got to be a man. Got to be considered for the pastorate. Got to be, in my view, a Baptist, like our faith, and being well trained, one who's devoted to God, and here it is all together, having gotten oneself blameless in these areas. Blameless. Amen. Let's take a break.